Hello students, today we are going to learn something about active and passive voice. How to change a sentence, active sentence to passive voice. Okay, so see here. In active sentence, we have a format that is subject, then verb, then object. That means SVO. In an active sentence, we give importance to a subject. Then, otherwise, very simply, we can tell as subject is the doer of the action. Okay, here action means the verb. Then object. So, what's the pattern? An active sentence, the pattern is SVO. That means subject comes first, then the verb, then the object. Okay, but in a passive sentence, we have to change the order. We have to write the object at first, then the verb, then subject. Okay, or else this is a format object plus we have hv already we learned in the very beginning sessions. Hv means helping verb. Object comes first in the passive type of sentences. Okay, passive voices. Object plus helping verb plus v3 form means the third form of the verb. We have three forms in verbs, v1, v2 and v3. So after helping verb we have to add the v3, then finally subject. Okay, so here I'm going to tell the 5 steps you have to follow an active sentence to passive. Okay, change an active sentence into passive. The very first one, you have to identify subject, object and verb in a sentence. Okay, first thing is identifying subject, object, verb in a sentence. Okay, next one is swapping. Swapping means changing. You have to change the subject and object, and the object comes first. Okay, so here in swapping is subject turns into objects. Then we will start a passive sentence, passive form, starting with object. Okay, that is what swapping. Subject and object, or object comes at the first. Next one is converting. Converting the V1 form. That means in active sentence we have no changes in the verb. It is in the main form, V1 form, SVO. V means verb 1 form. So that V we have to change into V3 form. Convert the main verb into third form. Next is add the helping verb of to be before the main verb. To be, different forms are there, helping verb forms. So you have to add different forms of to be. Okay, in before the main verb you have to add. When I write the more example, you will get a clear idea about how to use the different forms of to be. Next, finally, add preposition by before the subject. That is what the final step. Okay, you have 5 steps. Identify subject, object, verb in a sentence. Then swapping. You have to change subject and object, and object comes the first. Object comes first. Next is converting the base form into V3 form. Next, add the helping verb. Finally, use the agent. By is an agent, or we call as a preposition by. This we add. By we add before the subject. Okay, so see the passive voice format. Object plus HV means helping verb, plus V3. V3 means third form of the verb. V1, V2, V3, third form of the verb, plus by. By we can call it as an agent, and finally we have subject. So before the subject, before writing the subject, we should definitely add by in the passive form of writing. Okay, these all the details you have to keep in your mind before changing an active sentence into passive. So let's get started writing more examples of active into passive sentences. So my dear children, let's see how to write the active into passive sentences example. Okay, now today we are going to learn how to change an active sentence into passive sentence into passive form. Okay, so before going to the detail, we have to understand what is a sentence. Okay, in a sentence we have subject, verb and object. Okay, we divided a sentence into subject, verb and object. What is a subject? A subject is a person or thing about we are discussing in a sentence, or simply we can say a subject is a doer of the action. Okay, doer of the action. Okay, and a verb in simply we can call it as the action. What action is what is happening in a sentence? What action is happening in a sentence, that is considered as a verb. Next is object. Object is the receiver of the action. Receiver. Okay, so in a sentence we have subject, verb and object. Subject is the doer of the action and verb we consider as the action part, and object is the receiver of the action. Okay, so here I'm going to show you one example for subject, verb and object. Okay, see here. Rama writes a story. Okay, so here Rama is the doer of action. What did he do? Is he writes a story. So what is action is happening here? Write is the verb, because writing is an action, so that is a verb. Okay, so Rama is the doer. Rama is important person in this sentence, so we will consider Rama is the subject. Okay, then what is happened there? He writes a story. Rama writes a story. So what is happened here? Story is the action received here. So this is the receiving part. So we will consider that as the object. Okay, so Rama writing is an action. Then this part, what is happened here? That is the receiving part. That is object. Okay, so subject, verb, object. So in normal, an active sentence contains only these three areas: subject, verb and object. There is no change in the verb form in active sentence. Okay, that is what you have to keep in your mind. Next is, I'm going to remind you again the 5 steps that you have to follow. Change active into passives. Okay, the very first step is subject. You have to changing an object, and object comes first, swapping. Okay, so subject becomes the object and the object becomes the subject. Okay, that's the first step, changing subject into object or object into subject. Next one is never change the tense part. Okay, tense, if for example a sentence is written in a simple present form, you also have to follow the same simple present form for changing the passive format. Okay, so do not change any simple present into simple past or nothing like that. Okay, next one is the steps 3 is verb format, but you are not changing the tense format, but of course you have to change the verb format. The verb 1, V1 base form is changing into V3 form. Okay, a verb remains in V3 form in a passive voice. Okay, next is fourth one, we have to add helping verb. I will tell you in detail what is helping verb or how to write helping verb. Finally, the agent. What is the agent we are using? The agent by, or the preposition by we are using before the subject. Before the final part, you just have to add by. Okay, these are the 5 rules or 5 steps you have to keep in your mind for changing an active sentence into passive form. Okay, next